Welcome everybody. This is the third meeting of the EMS Grant Request Committee, and we are hopefully going to finalize determinations for the first recommendations of grants to the Boulder County Commissioners. And Barb is about to put up the agenda.
There you go.
Okay.
So tonight we're going to follow up with the agenda that we started last time we met. We've got the grant applications to re-review and some updates and information that you had asked for. Dennis and I went out and got some answers. We'll bring those to you tonight. By the end of the meeting, we hope to formalize the recommendations that will come from this committee that will eventually go to the county commissioners in January for approval. We'd like to spend a little bit of time on what we call a hot wash, which is what worked well for this grant round and what didn't, what can we improve on. And then thank you all for filling out the doodle poll. We do have some dates to propose that seem to work for everybody. So if you want, Dennis, I guess we could jump right into recapping the questions from the last meeting.
Right. One of the questions was, what's the legal definition of a rural or unincorporated area? Because the EMS grant money is to go to support rural and unincorporated areas. And per the legal response that Barb got, Lafayette's request is in fact can be considered something to serve the rural and unincorporated areas. We have some leeway as a committee in defining what is a rural unincorporated area, as long as it is something that's not truly restricted to a particular city or town. So the bottom line is Lafayette's grant request is within the realm of our ability to respond to it positively.
That's good news.
Yeah.
Does anyone have any follow-up questions? So the definition that essentially what I was told is the ballot language was essentially to try to fill gaps for the rural and underfunded agencies to be able to respond as they need to. So it is much more broad than just designated to the unincorporated areas.
So what's Barb is put up is what essentially we agreed to at the last meeting, tentatively agreed to. And I think maybe the first thing I should do is ask if anybody has any questions or concerns, or think of anything that should be changed before we go on and decide a couple of things that might be changed. Is everybody comfortable with this from the last meeting? I see heads nodding. Okay.
Do we want to jump into the first one, which was we got some additional radios.
We met with Chris O'Brien. Is that right? Yeah, Chris O'Brien. And he had a meeting of the BCFFA right after we met with him, and they were able to increase the radio request for most of the rural fire protection districts. As you can see in the chart that's there now. And so that increased their requested amount by $197,244. Which I understand is within the amount of money we have to allocate, should we choose to do that.
Okay, they've got some hands up there, Dennis.
Okay, thanks. Doris?
So that amount increase incorporates additional fire protection districts. Is that correct?
My understanding is it always included all the rural fire districts. It
Right.
just increased the number per. So this was at least probably
Okay.
these at the bottom probably should have been at the top. So the initial request of what they sent us was this first left column.
Okay.
Oh no, that's what, sorry. This first column is what the fire districts had originally asked for. When they knew that if they asked for everything, it was going to be $2 million. And I said, we don't have that amount in the full budget. They came back, they sent in the grant with the second column, which was a reduction. So we went back and said, if you had some additional, maybe up to $200,000 to consider, then how many radios would you assign to the rural districts? And that's that final column is they're updated. So fully giving everybody the radios they wanted was 471, which everybody, the BCS FFA acknowledged that was a big number and probably a little inflated. They felt very strongly that this final number of 310 is a good number to outfit all of the rural. They're still asking the career and well-funded agencies down on the plains to buy their own radios. So they also pulled that out from the original request.
Okay, thanks.
Juliet? Sorry.
Yeah, I know last time we discussed the allocation of the total radios between the different agencies with certain amounts being maybe a little disproportionate. Have you been able to discuss that at all with Chief O'Brien?
We didn't discuss that beyond the fact that we discussed the allocation of radios to the different fire protection districts. And he pointed out that the chiefs of the different districts put the number in that they thought they needed. And he was comfortable with that, believing that the various fire protection districts would ask for what they needed, and we didn't need to give them more than they asked for.
That these final numbers were really probably a lot closer to the number that meets their requirements. The extras were really just extra. Did you talk about the adding in of this BCFFA training radio cache, Dennis?
I did not mention that. Go ahead, Barb.
This one of the things that had been pulled out of the original request, but that they thought was a good idea, and the sheriff's office thinks is a good idea, is to send 10 of these radios to the fire center, which is off of the diagonal in Boulder. If you ever drive between Gun Barrel and Boulder, there's the fire training center there. These radios would be stuck there and be able to be loaned out. And so if one of the districts shows up and doesn't have a radio, they could use it. If one radio breaks down, they could use a loaner. But essentially it's a revolving kind of like a library of being able to check out radios, and they're not assigned to any district. They belong to the fire center and can be used as needed. So that was a nice, I thought, addition to the request.
Doug?
Yeah, I guess it was kind of some of our question last time was just that, you have Boulder Mountain Fire that's getting 65 radios. I'm just looking at their website and they have 50-ish that says volunteers. So just trying to understand why they're up staffing 15 radios so every single person on their department has a radio, when look at some of these other volunteer departments that are pretty lean that might need them. I know that's not our job. I was trying to figure that one out. I think that kind of back in on Juliet's question a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a fair question.
I mean, I think it's a fair question, but I also think it's one of those where we have to leave it up to the BCFFA to decide the allocation of radios. Ben?
Yeah, I just wanted to echo both of those. I mean, it seems like Boulder Mountain is asking for a lot of radios. All the surrounding districts seem like they're going to have radios for a fraction of their firefighters. So I think that just, is a little bit of a, not a red flag, but just an interesting thing there. And similarly for Coal Creek, I mean, that's a district that, is a joint district between Gilpin and Boulder counties. So should we be providing, almost, a significant fraction, about a sixth or, 20-ish% of the radios from this grant to a agency that, has a relatively small coverage in Boulder County, in unincorporated Boulder County, and should be getting some support from Gilpin as well.
It's entirely within this committee's domain to suggest cutting back, spreading that out across the other districts.
Okay.
Do they have to abide strictly by what they presented on terms of how they give out these radios? Can we say, yes, we think 310 radios are great. We need it for the county. We suggest you go back and revise how you guys came up with these numbers. We'll leave it to you, but just leave it on them. Or do they have to strictly give the radios that we approve here to these agencies as it's presented to us?
Let me think through that a little bit. You could, I think, make a recommendation that you feel the radios are, there's too many allocated to those, specifically to Boulder Mountain and to Coal Creek Canyon. And you'd like to see those reallocated to the fire districts below. And then Dennis and I could go back and negotiate that, if that's what you feel.
Okay.
Could we just allocate, 310 radios and just say, do a better job allocating? I mean, I don't want to
Yeah.
beleaguer the point and have us
Okay.
nitpick at them. Hey, we agree 310 radios is what they're asking for. We're going to give them 310 radios and maybe just do a little bit more. Well, it's what the Chiefs wanted, so we assume that's what they need. Maybe do a little more work on their end when they actually divvy out the radios and put it on them and not beleaguer this committee to have to vet
Yep.
that process.
I think that's a great compromise, and that's certainly doable.
Okay.
So take another run at distribution. Okay. Good. That's, I think, is everybody pretty much on board with that idea? Okay.
Everybody raise your hand.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know. Can you see everybody? Okay.
I can't see everybody, but I see
That's what I
enough.
wondered. Do you have the view? Yeah, I think you probably can mostly see only 6 people. I wish I could adjust that for
Good
everybody, because I don't need to be on camera, but I can't. I think as a host, I'm always going to be on camera. Okay, so we got through the radios, and then we're back to
Lafayette.
I guess, yeah, Lafayette. Oops. Do you want to recap our conversation with Chief Bradshaw?
Yeah, we met with Chief Bradshaw from Lafayette and discussed the technical rescue equipment. And he had a very nice discussion and presentation about places that they've already been involved with cave-in rescues and so forth, and all the people involved in such missions, and the importance of getting people properly equipped on scene as soon as possible, because these sorts of rescues often result in fatalities unless people can get there really quick to get injured parties in a safe position. You have anything to add, Barb?
No, you covered it. I mean, he just made a real good point that Lafayette is just like the city of Longmont or Boulder, who are really well equipped in this area. Lafayette is called out as part of the Boulder I forget, the Boulder County Technical Rescue Team. And that because of the location of Lafayette in the southeast part of the county, that's an area that both Boulder and Longmont, it would take time to get there. And
Right.
he would be willing, he also mentioned that the battalion chief in Lafayette, this is that person's specialty is technical rescue, and they've really been investing in training. They've been sort of creating a team within the bigger county team to be able to do these kinds of rescues, and to have the truck outfitted would just make them be able to use that talent and training that they've been developing, and they're willing to go and report wherever it's needed. And as we pointed out last time, there is quite a bit of rural land still outside of the cluster of Superior, Louisville, Lafayette, and Erie. That they'd go up to the mountains if need be. They use the example of reporting to an oil spill in Lyons, where agencies from around the county were there. So this would not be limited. Our concern, I think, last time was whether this would be primarily used in the city of Lafayette. The idea is that it just makes there be more capacity anywhere in the county for this type of rescue if needed.
Doris?
I kind of want to make a clarification because I think Doug mentioned it last time, and it kind of stuck with me. Is this team kind of like, I think he said it was kind of considered like a hazmat team, where not everyone has one of these teams, but there's just several sprinkled around through the county?
That's
That's correct.
Yep.
Okay, yeah. All right, thanks. That helped a lot. I mean, okay, thanks.
Yes, I guess city of Longmont, city of Boulder have I think he said about an investment of about $500,000 each. So this request for almost 100,000 is quite a bit less than that, but it would still give them in their locale the ability to go out and do these rescues. So we just wanted to let you know that this is on the table again, where we weren't sure legally if this was something that would fit. That burden has been relieved. There is this could be considered by this committee as a viable grant.
Anybody have any questions? And I assume people are comfortable then probably approving this.
Okay.
Okay.
Thumbs up. Anyone opposed?
Yeah.
So that just leaves the final one that we left open
Right.
last week. There was support for the first two pieces of the three-pronged request. Not so much
This is
support for the
for
vehicle.
Yeah, this is for Sunshine. And the one thing we weren't comfortable as a committee supporting was their acquisition of a command vehicle. Barb has since discussed that with powers that be, and they said pretty much every fire protection district has or should have a command vehicle. And if Sunshine doesn't have one, it might be appropriate for us to approve funding a command vehicle for them. Now, we can punt on that. We can let Sunshine resubmit a request. It would have to be in 2 years, assuming we approve the first two items they have. I personally am a little uncomfortable with the amount of money they've asked for this rescue vehicle, and they haven't provided a lot of details other than was it $76,000 or $78,000? It seemed kind of excessive to me.
I saw that Rick has hand up, but then did he disappear?
Rick?
Yeah, he did put it up and then take it down. I don't disagree with Sunshine's assertion that everyone should have a command vehicle that can go anywhere, communicate with Boulder Communications, and be able to give a quick and direct response. I think part of the issue that was brought up smartly by Barb last time was, is this a precedent we can set? Does this make sense long term as an ask?
Right.
Personally, I would love to have one for every agency, absolutely. And if they could be interchangeable, much like the radios, all the better. However, I'm not sure what our scope is and whether that's the best use of these funds.
And Ben?
Yeah, I think just echoing some of those, yeah, like, is this the right avenue for rural departments to be outfitting themselves with vehicles? And one thought is, the language of the solicitation for this was for, large and small capital projects for the districts, and for a lot of districts, this is a large capital project, would be investing in a truck. So I think that we should just sort of clarify as well, because I know on the search and rescue agencies as well, I think at least a few would be planning to ask for vehicles in their round of funding next year with this too. And those could be very useful. So I guess just some thoughts about what do we view this money for? Is equipment good, or vehicles? Could vehicles be something that are fundable? Do we maybe want to see more information? Do you want to ask for more information, kind of like we did with Lafayette about this? Some thoughts.
Yeah, my one concern is asking for more information means that we can't approve all these at this meeting. I mean, we could approve a lesser amount of money. We can just tell them to come back in 2 years.
To answer the
whether-
first question about, or one of the questions about whether that's a use of these funds, I'd say yes. I'd say any request by a fire district that meets an unmet need and falls within a capital investment, or capital piece of equipment, including a truck, is exactly what this grant fund was made for. So there's no concern about whether that fits the definition. I think the precedent, and also figuring out, how many districts don't have a command vehicle who would likely ask for one going forward. It was the sheriff's impression that most already have some vehicle that they could use for that purpose, but I don't know what most means. I mean, I don't know if that leaves 10, 6. I don't know how many districts don't have one. Looks like Rick again, and then Doug.
Yeah, Rick.
Dennis, I'd like to go back to one of your earlier reactions, which was, that seems like a lot of money. And I guess my question back to you on that would be, okay, is there an amount of money, maybe it's a part of that money, a percentage of that money, that you'd feel more comfortable with? And in response to, do a lot of agencies have them? A lot of agencies have some that are provided by the district. Others have command vehicles that are owned and operated and maintained by the volunteers.
Their own personal, is that what you're saying, that they're?
For some agencies, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, to go with part of that, Rick, their request said they wanted the command vehicle for the chief, not for the district. And the wording was a little, we're interested in supporting the district and not so much supporting buying a vehicle for a particular member of the district. Doug?
I guess, yeah, that would just be mine. It was just the wording that they wanted to provide a vehicle for the chief because he currently drives around in his own car. Would that
Right.
be like he's going to be down in the city driving around in his vehicle? Or are they looking for more like a command vehicle that would just be staged up in Sunshine that somebody could grab when they have that fire or that incident that they need the command vehicle, more of a utility vehicle that everybody can drive. I don't know if Sunshine has that right now. I mean, I don't know if Ben or Rick or one of you guys have more knowledge on their apparatus. I don't, but it seemed like it was a more of just like a personal vehicle, because he didn't want to be driving his own and then responding from home, responding from Boulder or wherever in his personal vehicle.
And I will say that the sheriff's input on this, and same with the county attorneys, was that it would have been better if this was written to give the vehicle to the district. And if you were to recommend this piece go forward, either in part or in whole, a good recommendation would be to change the wording to say that the command vehicle will be given to Sunshine District and to be used, as needed by any person, any member of the district, so that, if the chief should retire tomorrow, that vehicle, it's very clear that that vehicle stays with the district.
Right. And as Doug pointed out, it's not a personal vehicle for the person who's the chief to drive when they go grocery shopping in Boulder or something.
Right.
It's a vehicle for the district.
That would mostly be parked probably at the one of the fire stations there.
Right. Ben?
Yeah, I think the implication was that it's for the chief position of the department. I think that's the implication there, rather than tied to this specific chief.
Yeah. I think that's kind of the implication, but it's not how they worded it. And we can certainly grant the money or some amount of money for a command vehicle with a change in the wording.
Does anyone have an idea? I think the request was for about 78,000 for this particular unnamed brand of vehicle, and some associated tools. Does anyone have a better maybe estimate of, would a pickup truck or would a Chevy Tahoe, or I know a lot of these cars, everything is expensive these days, but Dennis and I were talking probably, four-wheel drive vehicle, high clearance, with the radio in it and room to add other equipment as needed is probably, what's required, not a fully outfitted, but maybe somebody who's, serves in the capacity would know better what all comes with a command vehicle.
I guess it's really how fancy you want it to be, Barb. I think the bare bones would be, a set of lights on it, the ability to have communications, radios, and then, it's however they want to personalize it from there. You'll see some that are pretty decked out with like their own trays with a bunch of radios in there and a bunch of consoles. It could be upwards of $150,000, $300,000 they can pour into something like this. Or like you're saying, it could be bare bones.
Ben, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a little low on the total cost of what you might expect something like this to run. And I think that there was some thought that this was for the vehicle loan and that the agency might do their own work and investment to outfit it with extras. So
So the type of vehicle that would be needed, this is not their money requested does not exceed what you think it would cost.
Correct. I think that they had a quote. I don't have the file up now, but I think they had a PDF of in their attachments of a specific truck from some local dealership. With that said, you could also go ahead, Dennis.
Go ahead, Ben.
With that said, I also think a smaller dollar amount could accomplish a similar goal.
I mean, maybe if we're gonna, go ahead, Doris. Yeah.
No, I just seen Doris nodding her head.
Oh.
Go ahead, Barb. Go ahead,
And
Doris.
I'll jump in there. You know, my concern is going back to the home, you know, does this set a precedent of that? And again, I don't know how many of these districts have it or don't have it, but you know, hey, ours is old. Do we get one? That's kind of my thought. I mean, maybe we do a partial funding of it. So there's kind of, you know, there's some equity in there involved from the fire protection district, and meeting us on the middle of command vehicles. Because then if another fire protection district says, hey, we want a command vehicle, it's kind of following that precedent. Does that make sense? That was just my thought.
Yeah, I mean, if you pay out the full amount on this one, then that becomes the base layer. Then everybody's going to want that same money or more. So maybe there's a level that's more. I mean, again, you could just say we haven't done these rounds enough to know whether this is something that we want to fund, or and if this was the only request, I'd say ask them to come back a year from now. But because you're already leaning towards supporting the first two pieces on there, that means the Sunshine would likely get funded this round, and so they can't come back next year. They would have to wait 2 years. So that's something that this one's a little tricky because of the parameter. This was not a sole request.
They would have to consider as their number third on their list too, right? They had one was for the brakes, two was in UTV, and then their third like on the totem pole was this option, right? Like in terms of like priority.
Yeah, I think we
Right,
can.
I don't know. Go ahead.
I think we're all going to say I do believe that they put them in the order that they most thought was be successful or they most needed.
So I'm kind of reading between the lines. Tell me if I'm wrong that we as a committee are willing to fund a command vehicle for Sunshine for part of the funding. Is that true? People have different opinions. Say 50,000 versus a 78,000 as an example. Yeah, Rick.
I might look at the combination of the ATV and the command vehicle under vehicles and look at actually what they are asking for the UTV as well as the command vehicle. And maybe there's a number that could partially cover both and they could decide how to best use it.
You mean combine the requested amount for the two of them and then cut it back at some point and say use it however you feel is most valuable for Sunshine.
Yeah, if they want to put all the bells and whistles on the UTV, that may take out of their command vehicle money, or maybe they want to be modest on two different things and support both of them and add the specialty equipment they need to outfit them specifically for their agency. I'm thinking giving them the management of this versus us.
Yeah, we can certainly do it that way. I think, Barb, that's true.
Yeah, in that case, would you set a different amount? I was trying to call up the actual request, but it changes what I'm sharing. Let me stop sharing and then I can pull up the request that they put forth. See how they broke it out. So they
asked for $35,616 for the UTV and $78,773 for the command vehicle.
Thanks for finding that.
And another $23,909 for their brake retarder. Hi, Kate. Welcome.
Hi, Kate. For some reason, I'm having a hard time putting my finger on that, Dennis. Are you able to share that?
Oh, I have it over here on my iPad.
Got it. Okay. Was it not in there full grant requirement? I don't see the numbers next to what.
It's in the supplemental. We have an attachment
It's
to
in
it.
the, and for some reason I
Yeah.
don't see that. I'm looking at what I had put up on the Google Drive and I don't find Sunshines.
Gotta find.
Go back and look at the original.
Maybe that's not gonna do it.
Ah, thank you.
Thanks, Doug.
There we go.
Okay, here's the 2024 RAM. Okay. Yeah, that is just the truck.
So Ben's suggestion was that we, as I understand it, was that we combine what they asked for the truck and for the UTV, and then perhaps reduce that by some amount and let Sunshine decide where and how they want to spend it. Am I saying that correct, Ben?
I think it was Rick who
Rick,
suggested that.
yeah.
Oh, Rick, I'm sorry.
I'd say the only caveat is that they did show an actual vehicle they intended to buy, and less money won't get them that vehicle. They would have to get something else.
Suggestions? Should we fund the whole thing?
Also, I like Rick's idea. I mean, if you add them both together, it's approximately 150,000. So, you know, you fund 80,000 of it, and then they can say, okay, I can get a $40,000 truck, or, you know, they can make up the delta of that and they could purchase the UTV. I don't know, but I do like that suggestion.
Okay. Ben?
Yeah, I think the way Doris just broke it down, I think is a great option. And just sort of future thinking, if we saw an application like this from other departments, maybe what would make us, or from, you know, RMR might be applying for a vehicle, you know, in the next group or such. Maybe if we saw something that was more descriptive into maintenance costs, things like that, that would help us as a committee, you know, be comfortable funding those things. Is that true?
Okay. I see Rick likes that idea, and I do too.
So to make sure I capture what's on the table, of those two items added together, they were about 100 and somebody threw out a number, but I'm not sure.
78,773 and 35,616.
You're gonna make me do math on the spot. 113 was the total. So cut that back to something other than that and ask them, because they could conceivably buy a used vehicle, right? Or
Right.
something
Or a less
that's-
costly command vehicle, or
Mhm.
yeah.
So if not the full 113,000 for that request, what would the committee want to put forward?
It was suggested 80,000. That was one
Thoughts?
suggestion. Other thoughts, Doug?
I know when we were talking back last meeting, you were talking about increasing the radio budget. Was this part of it? Not funding this command vehicle? Was that the delta that they're able to increase their radios by, or is that because the grant amount that we're allowed to allocate and how many the dollar amount that actually was requested was lower?
The latter.
That's what I'm asking.
So the total request that came in was just under one. Well, was it right at 1.5? It was right at 1.5. Oh, I'm not sharing my screen anymore. Of all if we funded everything as it had come in, it was 1.5 million. This committee can go up to 1.7 million. So that additional 200,000 did not depend on whether you cut back on any of the other grants. It's just more about doing due diligence and setting precedent for future rounds and that kind of thing. So the total of the two vehicles together was actually close. There's 114,389. So if you cut that down to 80, you are cutting. You're basically cutting back about 30, almost 35,000, 34,000 and some.
So ultimately, we would have some money available that we don't allocate.
You leave some money on the table, which no one's gonna
Right.
think you did your jobs well if you didn't spend every dime that was available.
Ben, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I guess just to contextualize that 35K reduction would bring Sunshine's ask down to closer to 100K, right? 10 something, which I think is a maybe more comfortable number to swallow. And it essentially says, by a dollar amount, it'll be funding half of a command vehicle that they asked for, but that would probably fund a used one, or they could try to match that themselves. But I think that's a number that could make sense.
So do others agree? Rick's thumb is up. Kate is wondering what's going on.
No, I agree. I just was gonna say I'm a little hesitant not to fully fund it, because what if we are always in this situation where we have the funds to do it? I feel like we're making a decision based on a maybe, but I'm totally fine with this decision. I'm just throwing that out there that, tis the season of generosity.
Yeah, we anticipate we'll never be in this situation again where we have enough money to fund all the requests.
I think initially the first couple of years after, when there's a lot of pent up requests that'll come in the next couple rounds.
Okay.
So not funding a whole request might be a nice precedent to set.
It also gives us a little extra should we have more requests than money next time.
Mm-hmm.
Does that work, or does this allocated money go to the sheriff to do what he wishes with them?
So to kind of answer that, I do think that the other areas of funding are going to be allocated on an ongoing basis fairly quickly. I think there will always be room if there is more money available for more training, for example.
Okay.
So the other thing I think what Ben was hitting on was that Sunshine's request was more than any of the other individual requests by quite a bit. And maybe one of the things this group could look at is whether there's somewhat equity between among the requests, bringing them closer together rather than having one that's out, because Sunshine did ask for 3 things. The other districts, other than Gold Hill, only asked for 1. And we struggled with that in the conversation last week or 2 weeks ago about whether we should restrict these to 1 per grant cycle or let people go ahead and request a bunch of stuff, but knowing that the more you put in, the more likely there's going to be some tweaking and pulling back. That these longer wish lists are going to get harder to fulfill as we get more of them in.
Mhm. So I'm looking for some sense of consensus to perhaps allocate Sunshine something like $80,000. I'll say specifically allocate Sunshine $80,000 versus their whole request for the ATV and the truck, plus in addition, provide them money for their brakes. Is that how you understand it, Barb?
Yes, that's exactly how I read the request. And then they would not be eligible until 2025 to come back and ask for anything. Unless
Right.
it was a thing like the radios where it covered broadly across the districts.
I think that was a question I asked last time.
It was, and I did get some non-clarification. I got sort of a let's not look at hypotheticals, but let's wait and see. But there's definitely leaning towards funding that I think there's the next round they're hoping to be more collaborative. Like this was a very individualized round of requests, that there may be more pressure for these fire districts to combine their requests and share and use things collaboratively. And if a fire district had gotten funded in one round is part of a bigger collaboration, that would probably be, acceptable.
Okay, so is $80,000 for the UTV and the truck something everybody is comfortable with? Raise your hand. Put your thumb up. Juliet? Ben? Okay.
Well, I think that wraps up then the discussion about the individual grants. If I can recap, you've decided, let me put this back up on the screen. You've decided to fully support. All right, let me get back to Zoom. Okay. To support the increase of the radios, but ask them to, we've agreed to the 310 radios instead of the 261, but ask them to take another run at perhaps reallocating, especially those that are for Boulder Mountain and Coal Creek, to the districts, the districts that could use additional radios, but put that back on the BCFFA to figure that out finally. And then support Lafayette was added in tonight with their full request. And then support number 1 at the full costs for Sunshine, and then provide $80,000 for the combined purchase of the UTV and a command vehicle, however they want to outfit that and set that up. The one,
And Go ahead.
Well, the one
I was
thing I
gonna
would
say-
have to ask the legal is if we can provide a partial funding of something, because they may say, well, we can't really get both of those things for 80,000. We know the UTV is not going to cost 80,000. I don't know whether we have to claw back the additional money that would be allocated towards the command vehicle or just let them use that money. So that's kind of an open-ended question.
Okay, my assumption is that would be okay, but yeah, we should verify that. The one thought I had was we also want to be sure that any funding we're providing for a UTV or a command vehicle is to support the district.
Yes. Right. And we would
Not just a
encourage anybody with
Yeah.
a similar request down the road to make sure that the wording is such that the district, even if the chief is interchangeable and could be switched out, that the vehicle is designated to the district to do with it as they see fit.
Right. But it's there to support the district. So are we to the point where we're ready to vote in some sort of an official manner?
I think you are. And I'll type that up in a formal memo, but as long as the language is compatible with what you have proposed, we're good.
Okay, Rick?
Does this require a motion?
Mm-hmm. Yes, please put forward a motion.
Then I motion that we move forward with this recommendation as previously discussed and as noted by Barbara.
I second.
Dora seconded. All in favor, raise your hand. Rick? Doug?
Kate has fallen off my screen. I can't see Kate.
Kate, are you raising your hand?
Yep. Okay, good.
Okay. And Rick and Ben and Kate and Juliet? Okay. I see hands for everybody.
Okay. So only the people not attending today, everybody's in favor from the group that's in attendance tonight.
Does anybody have any objections? No.
Okay.
Is your hand up just for voting, Kate, or for? Okay.
All
Okay.
right. Okay. Well, thank you all.
So-
That was a big piece of this.
The next part of the agenda was sort of a hot wash on what we did
Yeah.
and how, right? Am I correct?
Yes, you are correct. So we could do this a couple ways. Folks can raise their hand and just share, or we can put it in the chat, or we can, but I think we should start with sort of what worked well, or what you want to repeat in the next cycle. And I can take notes on that, but if somebody would prefer to write it out, you can certainly put it in the chat and we can bring it forward.
Rick?
My only comment at this time has to do with the scoring system we used. And I was wondering if maybe we could revisit how we want to be assessing these applications as they come in.
Okay, so take a look at that for the next round.
Mm-hmm. I particularly had a struggle with the scoring for the agencies that asked for more than one thing.
Yeah.
Kate?
I'd like to clarify the financial section on, like, now that we've done it one time, maybe we can have some better descriptors for what like financial health means. Cause I think it was That one was really hard to score.
Sounds good.
Other
Anything
comments?
else? So the next round, I'll go right back to my slides. Hold on, sorry.
Kate's
We-
hand is up.
Kate, did you have more to add? Because we can continue to talk about that. I did want to kind of give you an idea of the timeline. So real quickly, the recommendations that you've come up with tonight will be, I'll type those up into a memo and take those to the commissioners at their January 16th business meeting. Dennis will be out of town. He's getting back that evening. The business meeting's at 10:30 a.m. So I'd like to offer perhaps to the vice chair, Ben, if you wanted to just, this would be a virtual meeting. If you wanted to be there when I present, just as the representative of the committee, that would be great, but don't feel any pressure. But that would be an opportunity for you as representative of this committee to, if the commissioners had any questions back, that you could respond on behalf of the committee.
Yep, right now that is open on my schedule, so
Okay,
I'll
great.
pencil that in.
I will send you an invite. Then the grant payments will be issued probably in February. Once we get approval from the board to move forward, we'll go ahead and issue those payments. And then pretty quickly, we look at the next grant cycle, which will be for a different group of grantees. It'll be for rescue groups, specific to those that we already know, and hopefully some we don't. So I think the big ask from all of you for the next grant cycle is going to be refining the system so we can look at the things you just mentioned, changing the scoring, changing the financial, how we get at financial health, and also importantly, really casting a wider net to find, because the instance of the fire districts, we know who they are and how to reach them. I think for this next round, we're going to have to figure out the best way to communicate to groups that we may not be familiar with and make sure they're aware that this grant money is available. So the dates that had come up that worked for everybody were these dates on the left, the February 13th, February 27th, and then I would say either one of the March 26th or March 27th. Eventually, I need to get this committee on a regular monthly meeting schedule. The date that seemed to work best for folks was the 4th Tuesday of the month. This will help for recruitment for this committee later, is if we have some set dates that people know they either can or cannot make. Did you have your hand up, Kate, about this matter?
I have a question, a clarifying question before we sign off, so it can wait.
Oh, okay. So what I'd like to find out, I think if we were to stick with maybe, we could do the February 27th, for example, and the March 26th, if we want to stick with Tuesdays, and then really look to launch the next cycle in April. We probably have to meet 2 dates in April and May to finish that grant cycle. If we met on the 13th, the 27th, and the 26th, essentially those 3 Tuesdays, we could get the grant cycle launched on that March date and then come back probably in early May. So it's kind of a preference to you. Is you rather have a couple meetings in February, but then be freed up in April? I didn't go into April because I just figure our schedules probably are not going to be solid for the months past the first quarter. But if we could get at least 2 meetings in this first quarter on the calendar, that would help us move into that next grant cycle. Does anyone have preferences for 2 or 3 meetings in February and March?
Barb, why don't I
I'm
ask my,
com-
because I think that might help me make that decision. Do we need a quorum for this group?
We do,
Okay.
to make decisions.
Okay. And so like tonight would have been a meeting where we needed a quorum, but the planning meetings, we
Right.
don't need a quorum.
That's correct. If you were just talking about strategies or, you know, sharing lists and, you know, brainstorming on how to reach out to groups, you don't need a quorum for that. But if you make a motion and you vote on something, that's what a quorum is needed.
Okay, thanks. Just clarifying.
You know, that said, we hope to not dip
So-
down below the quorum as much as possible. Do you,
So I'm
Okay.
comfortable with the 3 meetings, the 2 in February and the 1 in March, so that we can get on with things in April.
we could even, if we have those 2 meetings in February, really be pretty ready to get the grant out there, you know, in March, and then tweak. I think
we
we
can
could
always
get
give-
started.
Yeah, and we can always give the agencies a little extra time to submit a grant too.
I think we should do that for this next one. One, I think we're going to be chasing down. It's going to take some time to get the word out. But
Mhm.
also because, again, the fire districts, we sort of wanted to get around done, get them funded for this first year of tax collection, and we can take more time in 2024. Doris,
Okay.
did you have something?
I agree with the stacking the 2 days. I think once you have the time change in March, it's going to be a lot harder to get people after work.
For sure.
My selfish thought on that, fully disclosure. So I would say stack them. It would be my preference.
Okay. And if we can get done what we need to get done in those first 2 February meetings, then you can have the March date off. But maybe we'll schedule all 3 of those dates so that they're on people's holds and then go from there. Does anyone have
Anybody have any objections to doing that? I see nothing.
Okay. This is your chance. But I agree with that. I think, Doris, maybe while it's winter, we do some more work ahead of time so that you can have more time off when the weather's better and there's more daylight.
Mhm.
All right. Well, unless anybody had anything left on the hot wash, any things you want, I'll bring forward sort of a larger discussion around changing the actual application. But how about now we only had 6 grants, so that wasn't as hard to review as if we had more. But how much time, you know, was the time it took you to review them adequate? Looks like Juliet had a question.
Juliet?
Is there a possibility if the grant requests come in waves that we would get a few to start reviewing while others are still coming in, or do we need to have access to all of them at the same time?
Let me ask about that. I think generally our preference is to make let you have them all at once. Probably from a fairness standpoint, but if it would be easier to see them on a rolling basis, we can look
It's
into
just
that.
easier to carve out times if we can review 2 at a
Mhm.
time, because that's what's coming in. We don't need to discuss just 2. We would discuss the full scope, but
Would give us a chance to review them
Yeah.
and spread out the review time longer than.
Yeah.
Well, you're assuming somebody turns it in early. I'd say most grants, anything I put a deadline on, I get 80% of them in the last day.
Right.
But
Right.
yes, I understand what the request. We did get it. The radios one came in fairly early. It looks like
Ben?
Ben.
This could just be entirely my personal opinion, but I felt like it didn't take too long to read the individual grants. I don't want to overestimate how much time each of us have, but I think, if it was 250 words to try to assess some of these things, which might have felt a little thin, I feel like I would have been okay with this particular cycle bumping it up to say 500 words. But if we get 3 times the applications next time, then I'll regret having said that. So I don't want to overstate here, but I felt like I could have 5 more minutes of reading to really understand these applications would help us in this deliberation process. That was my thought.
That's really good feedback, and I struggled a lot with that in terms of making it easy on both the applicant and the committee to not have to read longer pages. But if you felt that perhaps the information was inadequate because they didn't have enough room, then that's not a good situation to be in.
Rick?
I don't necessarily agree. I think there were a lot of folks who didn't take advantage of the number of words they did have to use, and they could have better edited their documents to more succinctly identify what they were asking for.
So 2 points of view on that.
I can see Rick's point of view. Yeah, I think that we also allowed for supplementary material, and some groups took advantage of that or not. So I can see that. I agree with Rick on that. It should fall on the departments or the applicants to really do that, and that maybe in this cycle wasn't our function of being limiting to them, but on the applicant side.
We'll take a look at that next time and see where we feel the comfort. Okay, all right. I think that concludes official business for tonight.
And I
Anybody have
move
any?
that we adjourn the
ahead.
meeting.